Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be judged by your appearance? To be looked down upon because you don't fit someone's idea of belonging? Well, that's exactly what happened to Martha Williams one snowy evening in Chicago. At 68, Martha was everything you'd expect from a kind-hearted grandmother. Silver hair styled in a simple bob, comfortable shoes, and a well-worn suitcase that had seen better days. After 45 years of hard work, she'd learned that true worth wasn't about designer labels or fancy appearances. All she wanted that evening was a warm room at the Grand Plaza Hotel to escape the heavy snowfall. The same hotel where she'd started her journey decades ago, though nobody needed to know that. She'd worked her way up from nothing, but preferred to keep that story to herself. As Martha approached the elegant mahogany check-in counter, she noticed the young receptionist's eyes narrow, scanning her from head to toe. Little did anyone know, this seemingly ordinary evening was about to change everything. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but are you sure you're at the right hotel?" Ashley's voice dripped with condescension as she peered over her designer glasses. The young receptionist's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the polished mahogany counter of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Martha stood quietly, her weathered hands clutching her old leather suitcase. The warmth of the lobby was a stark contrast to the cold stares she felt from every direction. Through the grand windows, snow continued to fall heavily on Chicago's downtown streets. "The Holiday Inn is just a few blocks away," Ashley continued, her red lips curling into what seemed like a practiced smile. "It might be more suitable for your budget." A well-dressed couple nearby whispered and glanced in Martha's direction, quickly averting their eyes when she looked their way. The woman adjusted her fur coat and diamond necklace, inching away as if Martha's simple navy wool coat might somehow tarnish her expensive ensemble. "Actually, I have a reservation," Martha replied softly but firmly, maintaining her dignity despite the growing discomfort. "It should be under Williams, Martha Williams." Ashley's perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised as she reluctantly typed the name into the computer. The clicking of her acrylic nails against the keyboard seemed to echo through the ornate lobby. "Oh." Ashley's voice shifted to an even more skeptical tone. "I see a reservation here for our executive suite." She looked up, making no attempt to hide her disbelief. "That's $2,500 per night, ma'am. I hope you understand that we require certain assurances before check-in." Martha reached into her simple handbag, past the butterscotch candies and crossword puzzles, pulling out her wallet. As she did so, a small photo slipped out, landing face down on the counter. Before she could reach for it, Ashley snatched it up, her eyes widening as she flipped it over. The young receptionist's face suddenly drained of all color. Her hands began to tremble as she stared at the photograph, then back at Martha. Is this you?" Ashley's voice quivered as she held the photograph, but Martha calmly reached over and took it back, tucking it safely into her wallet. "My payment method, please?" Martha redirected, pulling out a simple blue credit card. Nothing flashy, no platinum or gold, just a basic card that seemed to offend Ashley even more. "Ma'am," Ashley's confidence returned, her voice dripping with renewed disdain. "Here at the Grand Plaza, we typically require a premium credit card for our executive suites. You understand, of course. It's for everyone's protection." The lobby had grown quieter now, with other guests openly watching the scene unfold. A young bellhop shifted uncomfortably near his luggage cart, while the concierge pretended to be busy with his computer. "I've never had an issue with this card before," Martha replied softly, her dignity intact despite the growing tension. Ashley's perfectly lined lips curved into a cold smile. "Perhaps there's been a mistake. Let me just call security to assist us." Her manicured finger hovered over a button beneath the counter. Martha noticed an elderly couple shaking their heads in disapproval, not at Ashley's behavior, but at Martha's presence in their prestigious space. The woman clutched her designer handbag closer, as if Martha might snatch it at any moment. "That won't be necessary," Martha began, but Ashley had already pressed the button. Within moments, 2 security guards appeared, their faces professionally neutral, but their stance clear. They were ready to remove this seemingly out-of-place grandmother from the premises. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Ashley announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. We reserve the right to refuse service to certain individuals. As the security guards moved closer, the elevator doors opened behind them. An older gentleman in an impeccable suit stepped out, his silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses catching the light from the crystal chandelier. His eyes widened in recognition as he took in the scene before him. Martha. His authoritative voice cut through the tension. Martha Williams, is that really you? Stand down, gentlemen. Bernard Thompson's commanding voice halted the security guards. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor as he approached the front desk. This woman taught me everything I know about hospitality. Ashley's perfectly maintained composure cracked slightly. Sir, I was just following protocol for unusual situations. Bernard's eyes, wise with 45 years in the hotel industry, crinkled at the corners as he smiled warmly at Martha. Unusual indeed. Do you know who this is, Ashley? Martha raised her hand slightly. Bernard, please. This woman, Bernard continued, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby, started in this very hotel when I was just a bellhop making minimum wage. He turned to address the gathering crowd of onlookers. Back in '78, when this place was struggling, she worked double shifts as a housekeeper, never complained, knew every guest by name. The wealthy couple who had been whispering earlier shifted uncomfortably. The woman's grip on her designer handbag loosened slightly. I remember watching her. Bernard's voice softened with nostalgia. She'd leave fresh-baked cookies for families with children, remember guests' anniversaries, keep extra toiletries for those who forgot theirs. While others saw it as just a job, she saw it as a calling. Martha finished quietly, her eyes meeting Bernard's with shared understanding. Ashley's face had lost its superior expression, replaced by growing uncertainty as she glanced between Bernard and Martha. The security guards had already stepped back, their postures relaxed but their faces showing increasing curiosity. But that's not even the best part, Bernard chuckled, reaching into his suit jacket. He pulled out an old, worn photograph, yellowed with age but carefully preserved. Ashley, would you like to see something interesting? This was taken right here in this very lobby, 30 years ago. As he placed the photograph on the counter, Ashley's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she reached for it. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face for the second time that evening. But this means, she whispered, looking up at Martha with new eyes. The story goes much deeper than that old photo, Bernard continued, his voice carrying the weight of decades. While Martha was making beds and delivering those cookies, she was also taking night classes in business management. Used to see her studying in the break room during her lunch hour, while others were gossiping or watching TV. The lobby had transformed into an impromptu gathering, with guests and staff alike drawn into the unfolding story. Even the elderly couple who had sneered earlier were now listening intently, their judgment replaced by growing curiosity. By 85, she had worked her way up to management. Bernard's eyes twinkled. But that wasn't enough. Martha had a vision for what hotels could be. Not just luxury stays, but places where every guest felt truly valued, regardless of what they were wearing or which credit card they carried. Martha stood quietly, her simple pearl earrings catching the chandelier's light, the same pearls she'd bought with her first bonus as a manager. When this place went up for sale in '90, everyone thought some big corporation would buy it, Bernard continued. Instead, this remarkable woman mortgaged everything she owned, took the biggest risk of her life. The banks laughed at first. A former housekeeper wanting to buy a luxury hotel. Ashley's hands trembled as she still held the old photograph, her earlier condescension replaced by a dawning realization. But Martha didn't just buy this hotel. Bernard's voice lowered, building suspense. She transformed it, made it the flagship of what would become... He paused, looking at Martha with respect. Please, Bernard. Martha spoke softly, but with quiet authority. I think it's time I explain myself. She turned to face Ashley, whose perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her growing apprehension. You see, young lady, when you were checking my reservation for the executive suite, you might have noticed something interesting about the hotel's ownership. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Ashley's eyes darted to her computer screen, scanning the information she had dismissed earlier, and her face turned an even paler shade of white. The Grand Plaza Hotels, Martha said quietly, all 47 of them across the country, are owned by Williams Hospitality Group. She paused, letting the words sink in. Or more simply put, by me. The silence in the lobby was deafening. Ashley's perfectly manicured hands gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. The security guards exchanged uncomfortable glances, while the wealthy couple who had been whispering earlier seemed to shrink into their expensive clothes. But that's impossible, Ashley whispered, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Williams is supposed to be... She trailed off, realizing the magnitude of her mistake. Supposed to be what, dear? Martha's voice was gentle but firm. More elegant? Better dressed? Perhaps wearing designer labels like the ones you've been eyeing all evening? Bernard stood proudly beside Martha, watching as decades of quiet dignity and hard work commanded the room more powerfully than any designer outfit ever could. You see, Martha continued, reaching out to take the old photograph from Ashley's trembling hands, I've found that true luxury isn't about crystal chandeliers or marble floors. It's about how you make people feel when they walk through your doors. She turned the photograph over, revealing a handwritten note on the back. Ashley's eyes widened as she read it, her perfectly lined lips parting in surprise. That note, Martha explained, her voice carrying across the hushed lobby, was written by a guest who stayed here during our very first year of operation. She was a lot like me, simple clothes, basic credit card, but she had saved for months to celebrate her 50th wedding anniversary here. Martha's eyes met Ashley's directly now, and for the first time that evening, the young receptionist couldn't maintain her superior gaze. Would you like to know what that guest wrote, Ashley? Would you like to understand why I still carry this photo in my wallet, even after all these years? The young woman nodded slowly, mascara-rimmed eyes now brimming with tears as Martha began to read the faded handwriting. Dear Martha, she read softly, you'll never know what it meant to be treated like a queen, even in my bargain store dress. You made me feel like the most important guest in your hotel. Thank you for showing me that dignity isn't about what you wear, but how you treat others. Eleanor, 1991. Martha carefully placed the photograph on the counter. Eleanor saved for 6 months to spend one night here. She and her husband had never stayed in a luxury hotel before. The staff at the time, led by our friend Bernard here, gave them the royal treatment. Not because they were wealthy, but because that's what every human being deserves. Ashley's carefully applied mascara was now streaking down her cheeks. The wealthy couple who had sneered earlier were staring at their own designer shoes, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I could fire you, Ashley, Martha continued, her voice firm but compassionate. I could make an example of how we don't tolerate discrimination in my hotels. That would be the easy thing to do. The young receptionist flinched, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as she reached for a tissue. But you see, Martha leaned in slightly, her voice lowering so that others had to strain to hear. I remember another young woman about your age who once made assumptions about people based on their appearance. She worked as a housekeeper here, and one day she judged a guest in shabby clothes, only to learn he was a famous author who preferred to live simply. Bernard smiled knowingly, remembering the incident from decades ago. That young woman was me, Martha revealed, reaching into her simple handbag. And the lesson I learned that day changed my life forever. So instead of firing you, Ashley, I have a different proposition. She pulled out what appeared to be a business card, but before placing it on the counter, Martha paused. The question is, are you willing to learn what that author taught me all those years ago? The entire lobby waited in anticipation as Ashley, her perfect composure completely shattered, looked at the card in Martha's hand. "This," Martha placed the card on the counter, "is an invitation to join our management training program. 6 months of hands-on experience, working every position in the hotel, from housekeeping to front desk, from kitchen staff to concierge." Tears streamed down Ashley's face, smudging her perfect makeup. "But after how I treated you, why would you give me a chance?" "Because 30 years ago someone gave me a chance when I needed one," Martha smiled warmly. "And look what happened. Sometimes, dear, our worst moments can lead to our greatest transformations." Bernard stepped forward, addressing the lobby full of onlookers. From that day forward, every Grand Plaza hotel implemented what we call Eleanor's Promise, a commitment to treat every guest with equal dignity, regardless of their appearance or status. Martha turned to face the gathered crowd, her simple pearl earrings catching the light. "We've trained over 2,000 employees through this program. Many now manage their own hotels within our group. Each one started by learning what true hospitality means, seeing the worth in every person who walks through our doors." Ashley carefully picked up the business card, her hands still trembling. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Williams." "Say you'll learn," Martha replied gently. "Say you'll understand that these," she gestured to Ashley's designer glasses and expensive manicure, "don't define your worth any more than my comfortable shoes and old suitcase define mine." The wealthy couple who had been watching approached Martha, the woman's eyes brimming with tears. We owe you an apology as well," she said softly. Martha smiled warmly at them. "No apologies needed. Instead, join me for coffee in the lobby. I'd love to hear your stories." She turned to Bernard, her eyes twinkling. "Would you mind having someone bring us some of those fresh-baked cookies? Some traditions are worth keeping." As the group moved toward the sitting area, Ashley watched them go, the business card clutched in her hand like a lifeline to a better version of herself. "Ladies and gentlemen, has someone ever judged you by your appearance? Made you feel less worthy because of how you looked or what you wore? We've all been there, haven't we?" Martha's story reminds us that true class isn't about designer labels or expensive jewelry. It's about how we treat others. It's about the dignity we show to everyone who crosses our path. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, perhaps a friend, a daughter, or a granddaughter, share this video with them. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the values that truly matter. Stories that show us it's never too late to learn, to grow, and to become a better person. Drop a comment below sharing your own experience with judgment or kindness. Let's build a community where everyone feels valued, just as they are.